All right, day 2, 7th grade science test prep. Again, you'll have 60 seconds to read and think about each question. If you would like more time, press pause on the video and give the students more time. 60 seconds is just a guideline. You have 60 seconds for the first question. Ready, begin. Alright, applying the brakes on this bicycle causes it to slow down because the brakes, one of these statements must be true, produce friction. Well, what is friction? Well, we can't really see the brakes, but they're right about here. Right about here. So the wheels are spinning, and in order to stop them, we pull the lever, which pushes the brake pad against the rim of the bike. What's happening is the brake pad's rubbing up against the rim of the bike until you stop, which is basically how brakes on a car, brakes on a bike work. It's no different than if you're riding a scooter and you put your foot down on the concrete and hold it there so you can stop. You are producing what we call friction between the brake pad and the tire, and eventually friction will slow it down and stop it. The choice here is A. If we read the other choices, use gravity to slow down the bicycle. Um, Gravity is always present, but it will not slow down the bicycle. If we add energy, that can only speed up the bicycle, and the brake pads cooling the bicycle's tires, well, it's not true, and it wouldn't slow the bike down anyway, but the friction part is a vocab word you should know and should understand. Next question, 60 seconds. Begin. All right, if these four identical balls are dropped at the same time from the same height, which ball will land first? This is the only tricky part. Which one's going to land first? Well, it's the ball that's moving the fastest. If they all started from the same height and they're all going to hit the ground eventually, which ball is moving the fastest? What they want you to look at, if you haven't already guessed, is the size of the parachutes. These three look very similar in size. What's different about this fourth one? It's smaller. There's going to be, as the ball is dropping, there's less air resistance caused by this parachute. Therefore, the ball will travel the fastest, hit the ground first, and our choice is ball 4. Next question, begin. Alright, which of these parts of an animal would most likely form a fossil? Fossils form over time. Um, you find them in rocks. So which one of these parts would most likely form a fossil? Well, it reminds me of, when I was a kid, I'd go exploring out in the woods and I'd find maybe some kind of a dead animal. And the truth of the matter is, when an animal decomposes, all the soft pieces, the muscle, the bone, or the not the bones, the muscles, the heart, the kidneys, all the fleshy pieces, in this case the heart, kidney, and eye, all that's going to decompose, and by the time if you waited about a year's time, all that stuff's going to be part of the soil. The things that would be left would be like the bones, the teeth, stuff like that. So the most likely pieces that you're going to find in fossils would be the hard parts or the teeth and bones. So the choice here is letter D. Next question, 60 seconds. Begin. All right, wind occurs when air masses move from one place to another. What causes those movement of air masses? This one's tricky. I'm just going to warn you. The position of the moon. Let's think about that. Some of you may know that the moon's actually does have an effect on the tide of the oceans. So the moon does influence things that happen here on Earth. It does not have an effect on wind. You may or may not know that. I'm going to throw that out. The heating of the air. Well, if you think about our planet as a big spherical rock with a thin layer of air basically surrounding the entire thing, when when energy from the sun travels to Earth, it's going to heat up the region of air that it's focused on. Would you agree with me there? When it does that, things happen. And it's happening constantly throughout the day, right? Every single day. What you may or may not know is that hot air is less dense, so we'll say hot air is less dense than cold air. So when you have hot air and cold air mixing, what happens is the hot air will move to get above the cold air. And when that movement happens, you get things like wind currents and wind traveling and air masses traveling around the globe. So thinking of it that way, the choice is B. I know that's a lot to take in about a minute, but that's the choice. Letter C, the rotation of the Earth. That is true. The Earth is moving, but that is not what causes wind and air masses to move. Condensation is also a tricky word. Condensation is like water vapor turning into liquid water, which is a real process, but again, it is not related to the movement of air masses. You're just going to have to remember that heating of the air by the sun here causes lots of crazy things to happen with our atmosphere. So, hope you learned something there. Next question, 60 seconds, begin. So if you read the question carefully, it says which pole arrangement, and if first you go pole arrangement, what does that mean? Well, they're talking about the poles of a magnet, north and south. Of the four magnets, will hold the cabinet door shut the most tightly when it's closed? Well, this is, again, you'd have to have this experience in science, but if you take, I'm going to do this over here, we got a bar magnet with a north and south pole, and we have a second bar magnet with a north and south pole. This south end and this north end, there's a lot of attraction here, meaning these will stick together. Now if we reverse the situation, here's my two magnets again, north, south, and we flip that other magnet around. We put the south pole here. This is going to be repelling. We don't want that arrangement, so we want opposites. So we look at the different situations. We go, all right, that's opposite. So this magnet, these are going to stick together. S and N here, opposite, going to stick together. So I think my choice is A. Let's just double check. We're going to get some repelling here, sticking here. Well, that's not a great arrangement because half of them are repelling. We're going to get repelling here, repelling here. That's a terrible arrangement. It's actually not going to shed at all. Attraction here, repelling here. So the best choice in this case, letter A. Next question, 60 seconds. Begin. All right, another tricky question here. Phases of the moon. Most people, when they look up, they don't really give it a second thought as to why you see a full moon, why you see a new moon, why you see a half moon, crescent moon, whatever the case may be. Um, Picture yourself, I would draw it here in the dark, but let's say I was standing right here. Here's me, and I'm looking at the night sky. So if the moon was here, let me look over here. Sun is shining. What am I going to see? If the moon was in position E, we'll just start there. What am I going to see? Well, I'm going to see this black here. Um, I'm not going to see much of a moon at all. The part that's illuminated is on the other side of the moon, so I'm not going to see it. As the moon moves, because the moon is actually kind of orbiting us, right? As it moves, like if I go to this position, I am now going to be able to see. So here's my field of view. I'm going to see part of that moon starting to appear. Some of it, a lot of it's dark, but some of it's starting to peek out, so I can see that. As it continues to move, think about my field of vision. What am I going to see here if I'm looking and the moon is directly up in that direction? I'm going to see what we'd call like a half moon. I can see half of it's lit up. As it continues to move, I'm going to see more and more of that moon until we get to this spot right here, letter A. When I look in this direction, the moon's up there. It's going to look like a complete, full circle, and that is what we call a full moon. So position A, but you have to think about it from the perspective of where you're standing and where the moon is. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Next question, 60 seconds. Begin. Here we go. According to the soil profile, in which layer are most of the soil's nutrients most likely found? This is kind of just knowing what a soil profile is and how soil works. So if I look at layer 1, which would be right here, this is where most of my nutrients are found. And the reason I know this is because the lower I get, the less organic material and nutrients are found, because it's actually turning, more from like the black dirt that we're used to around here, all the way, as the lower I get, it gets to more rocky, and we call this bedrock. Not a lot of minerals at that point. Now you're going to notice that the roots of these trees go way down, and the reason they do that is not only to collect minerals, but water could be further down than you think. So in the beginning, here's where they get the minerals and nutrients, and then those kind of drop off as I keep going down down through the soil. Next question, you have 60 seconds. Begin. All right, the percentages show how water is used in homes in the United States, which is the most likely to conserve the most water. This is a subject that is interesting to me because I like to conserve water, and I like to conserve water because it's good for the environment and it saves you money. So, how do you know, how do you read this chart and how does that apply to what we see over here for our choices? 40% of our water usage is just from flushing toilets. 37%, which is really close to the flushing toilets, is used for showering. And then it goes down and it breaks down to what we use water for: cleaning, laundry, drinking water, kitchen. So you'd want to attack, if you want to save the most water, you want to attack either the flushing of the toilets or your bathing, which is your showering. So let's read the choices. Reducing water used to flush toilets. Well, that's exactly what I just said. If we can somehow reduce how much water we use when flushing toilets, then that's a pretty good choice. So I'm going to put a star by that one. Putting sud savers on washing machines. Well, laundry only takes up 4% of our water, so even if we were able to save half of that, we didn't really save that much. So B is a bad choice. C, prohibiting the use of treated water for lawns and gardens. Well, again, garden and lawn takes 3%. So if we even cut it out completely, that's only saving 3%, which isn't much, so C's gone. Reducing the amount of water used per load in the dishwasher. Again, dishwater could be, maybe 7% here. So if we cut that down by half, we'd only be saving 3-4%. So if we flush the toilets half as many times as we normally do, or get a toilet that uses half as much water, we could actually save 20%. So the choice here is A.